Hey folks, my name's Koray,
I'm Alex.
and we are the Super Thought Bros, and we are here today to tell you guys about our most anticipated games for 2021. Let's jump into it.
All right, if you know me, you know Persona 5 is one of my favorite games of all time. But I've never played Persona's Origin series, which is Shin Megami Tensei. So if you guys remember, Shin Megami Tensei 5 was announced as one of the first games for the Switch, way back when it was the NX. Do you remember that, Koray?
Oh, yes.
It was one of the very first games announced for the system. But we didn't hear anything about it until fall of last year, when it was revealed that it would be a title for 2021. So I've been told that the Shin Megami Tensei series is like a more hardcore, darker version of Persona, so I'm super excited to try out the game. We haven't seen any gameplay in the trailers yet, but it looks really beautiful, and Corey, you know I love a really good dark RPG.
Yeah, does it live in the same world as Persona?
It isn't technically the same world, but it has a lot of the same monsters, and like the personas and the demons that are all the demons and monsters that you fight are like Beelzebub, Satan, like all of these
cool.
mythological creatures that you fight and then take onto your team. I don't know exactly how that works in Shin Megami Tensei, but
Sure.
It's the same world-ish. It's just like I think a darker, more intense version as opposed to like following, school kids in their everyday lives who also kick bad guys' butts at night in Persona. So yeah, super excited for that.
Number 5 on my list, Al, is a game that is pretty highly anticipated. Back for Blood, which comes out in June of this year, is a spiritual recreation, spiritual sequel to the Left 4 Dead series, which was, now it's about a couple decades old. But Back for Blood is a zombie shooter, extremely replayable. Cooperative zombie shooter. It's usually 4 people. And what kind of makes this game different is there's like a comedic effect. A lot of the characters have really funny one-liners, so the game has its own edge in that sense. But it's looking like it's going to be really fun to play, a really fun multiplayer experience.
That's awesome. So is it the same development team as the original series?
Yep, same guys.
Oh, that's very exciting.
And it's been, I think it's been over 10 years since Left 4 Dead 2. So this is a sequel long in the making.
Real quick follow-up, why is it taking them so long to do it?
They haven't said. I imagine that because we've seen this like resurgence of zombie games, that they were inspired by The Walking Dead and all that stuff to kind of jump back into the game. But yeah, good question. Hopefully it's because they were prepping with new ideas, but we'll see in June.
Hey, they were getting it ready for so long, so the expectations are going to be real high. Number 4 for me. One of my favorite games ever is Prince of Persia for PlayStation 3. It's a super cathartic game. It's beautiful, haunting experience. It's a quick game. It only takes like 6 to 8 hours to play through, so I've played through it many times. But I've never played another game in the Prince of Persia series. But everyone tells me that Sands of Time, which first came out in 2003, is, usually viewed as the greatest entry in the series and kind of like what the series is based around. So just next month, in March, we're getting a full remake of Sands of Time. And based on the trailers, it really seems to be a beautiful spiritual successor to the PS3 game that I really love. It seems to encapsulate a lot of what the series is, and I've kind of been scouring the internet, and it seems like Prince of Persia fans are really excited for it. It seems like they are giving fans what they want with this title, so I'm super pumped to give it a try.
It's interesting now. You have more than one remake on your list.
I do.
And I want to get your thoughts on how you feel about this kind of era of gaming that we're in, and actually movies too, where we're seeing a lot of remakes, kind of rehashing of games or movies that already existed. What is it that draws you to the remakes, and what do you usually look for when you go back and play an adventure again?
Well, it's fascinating because all 5 of the games on my list are either sequels, prequels, or remakes.
Wow.
So, isn't that funny? So, what I'm looking for in a good remake is, sometimes when you go back and play some older games that you might have loved from your childhood, you're like,
they just don't hold up.
It doesn't play as well as I used to. I think we talked about this on our podcast before. I think that something that, for example, the Switch has really done well is encapsulate gamers of our age's nostalgia.
Sure.
And these games, like, hey, remember this game that you played when you were 10 and you loved? We're going to bring it back into a full current gen version of it with fleshed out orchestrations, with streamlined gameplay and level design choices, and it's going to be like that experience that you had as a kid. You're going to relive that wonder.
Sure. But there's going to be something about it that feels fresh and new and exciting.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I think that's what always felt fresh about those games is when you first played them, a lot of the times visually the visuals were amazing and you were engrossed by them.
Yeah, and then you get to relive that in just an even better graphics engine now. It's very cool.
Number 4 on my list is another bloody zombie game, Resident Evil Village. I'm sensing a theme here.
Me too.
I played through the demo of this game, the visual demo we'll call it. It's more like a walking demo on the PS5. And I have to say, Alex, this is... it's hard to call a game this gruesome gorgeous, but it's gorgeous.
Okay.
The ray tracing, the lighting effects, everything about the shadow work and sort of the visual design is just absolutely astonishing, to the point where I was just like, I just stopped the game to look around. Like, it's just so pretty. But on a story level, this game follows the story of somebody who's trapped within the walls of this crazy sort of southern belle who, it seems, is using human blood to infuse her new wine fascination.
Oh, I do that too.
Yeah, so the story is about Alex Pracken killing people for their blood. But she's this crazy, like, debutante, and it seems as though this is going to be another solid entry in the Resident Evil series with the advantage of being next gen. So for that, I am very excited.
So, Koray, 1, do you love horror games as much as you love horror movies, and why do you love horror games so much?
I think horror games are so much better than horror movies.
Really?
Because instead of yelling at the screen and saying "Don't walk in there," you can literally not walk in there, which I do all the time. I mean, you've played Phasmophobia with me. I mean, we're just hiding in the closet the whole time.
This is true.
And I don't know, horror games I just think give a really special flavor to gaming. I'm a big believer that, like, there's just as much fun and exciting things to explore in the darker arts and in the darker sides of life. And I think horror games give us the opportunity to see the people who think that way and can build worlds in that way. It's awesome.
I agree. I'm not as well versed in the genre as you, but I do enjoy them when I come across them. Nier Automata is a game that literally blew my mind.
Yeah, we were loving this one.
Yeah. It's like the headiest, most psychologically challenging game I have ever played. Just such a good experience. So, Nier Replicant, which is the prequel to Automata, that game first came out in 2010. I have never played that game. I started with Automata in 2 years ago, 2018 maybe. Mm-hmm. So, Nier Replicant, the full version is Nier Replicant version 1.22474487139 is coming out.
That's Pi. I remember learning this.
Kind of. It's coming out in April, and it is a full remake of the 2010 game. So the Nier games used to be super niche. Like, everyone was like, what the heck are these bizarre games?
Sure.
But Automata, don't hold me to this, I believe it came out in 2017. But it really put the series on the board, and I'm really excited to return to that universe. It created this sense of mystery and wonder, and it was such an emotional experience from top to bottom, and it takes place in this post-apocalyptic world, and I'm really excited to see like what that world was before we got to this destroyed landscape that we play around in Automata. So I'm super pumped for this game.
So I have 2 questions for this game. My first one is, what is it about this game that has kept it so niche?
Automata, I can't
exactly.
I can't, because it's weird. It's a weird freaking game. I don't know as much about Replicant, but Automata is a freaking weird game, dude. You're like playing as robots, and they are gaining consciousness, and they're killing each other and eating each other and throwing themselves into lava, saying we will become gods if we kill ourselves. And there's a lot of spooky characters, and I think Replicant is maybe even weirder. But Nier Automata teamed up with, it's both Platinum Games and Square Enix, and I don't believe Replicant was originally. So the combination of, Square Enix's RPG elements with the combination of Platinum's bombastic, crazy, next-level combat was awesome for this game that's super heady, and it just is the weirdest but most perfect combination.
Yeah, and that was my second question, is for fans of Final Fantasy or Square Enix, will they see any similarities with those games in this?
Yeah, I mean, this is the teams that made the combat of Bayonetta and the RPG elements of Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy. There's definitely, your characters level up, your weapons level up, and you can become stronger that way. And then there's also fighting bajillions enemies at once, and that's where, not quite a warrior style game, but the frantic energy of a Bayonetta or a Beautiful Joe.
Oh my God, Beautiful Joe.
Yeah. So it's if you like RPGs and if you like action RPGs, Nier's definitely a good series for you.
Number 3 on my list is a new title, actually. Not a sequel, not a remake, not a prequel. This game's called Kena, Bridge of Spirits. It comes out on the PS5 in March. Couple interesting things about this game. The first, I guess, is that Ember Lab, the studio that's working on it, this is their first game.
Oh, wow.
And it's got a lot of support from Sony. So I can't think of many game scenarios off the top of my head where a indie developer was given this much attention for their first game, and I'm not really sure as to why they did in this particular scenario, but when you look at the trailer for this game, absolutely beautiful. So Kena is an action-adventure, magic-based platformer. And you follow the story of Kena, who's sort of she's like a magic-dealing witch little character, and she's very much in tune with nature, so she's sort of like a druid. And she can use the powers of these Pikmin-like creatures called the Rot. And as you collect the Rot, they help you on your adventure. They pick things up, you can throw them. It's actually very similar to the way Olimar uses Pikmin in that series. But the game looks gorgeous. It's got just beautiful environments, sort of like Ori, foresty type environments. And it's something that I think is very unusual for a first party looking title to be indie. It's kind of awesome.
Yeah, it is. And indie games are becoming more and more the blood of gaming these days, and some indie titles are growing so much. It's so awesome to see. Yeah. So I was just going to say, so this sounds like Ori, and then you brought it up. So it's a cross between, let's see, Ori, Pikmin,
and Fable.
Fable.
Yeah, because it's a third-person game, right? So you're behind your character. But the world, it couldn't be more Ori and Pikmin if it tried.
I didn't know anything about this game. I'm excited to go check it out. It sounds like something right up my alley.
Absolutely.
Could it be another Persona game?
What?
It is! This time, it is Persona 5 Strikers. So, Strikers is the direct sequel to Persona 5, which, as I said earlier, is one of my favorite games ever. But this time, the game is in the Warrior Dynasty style, meaning it's the Phantom Thieves versus hundreds of enemies at once. Now, obviously, anything with Persona 5, I'm going to be head over heels running to the store to get. But I recently played and loved Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity.
Yep.
And Koei Tecmo, who developed Age of Calamity, is also developing Strikers. So it's the same studio that took the exact same, what made Breath of the Wild great in a action-adventure game and translated it into a Warriors game. And there was so much care and dedication to the original game that I have, full faith in Koei Tecmo that they are going to create Strikers that, in a way that pays homage to Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal and just translates its gameplay into a different genre, and that does not make it feel like it's just a fan servicey spin-off. And this game comes out later this month in February, so super pumped to play this.
So for a game like Breath of the for the Zelda series, it makes sense that because there's so much lore and sort of expansiveness to that universe, it makes sense that they could go ahead and make a spin-off sort of action-adventure game, right? Do you think, and I don't know obviously, but do you think the Persona series is large enough that an action-adventure kind of spin-off is totally warranted, or do you think they're going to have to work a little bit more to tell a different side of the story?
Persona takes place in Japan. We're taking place in real world downtown Kichijoji and other real place locations. Each Persona title is like Persona 1, 2, 3 through 5. They're all different characters. They happen in the same universe with the same monsters, just like Shin Megami Tensei. But I think there's plenty to explore, and I have no worries that exploration is going to feel cool because the focus isn't necessarily on exploration. It's more on the combat. That's the meat and potatoes of warrior style games. But I have full faith that the story is going to be as engaging. Maybe not quite as heady as its predecessor because it is a little bit of a spin-off. But I have full faith this game is going to give Persona fans what they want.
Number 2 on my list is Gran Turismo 7, another PS5 game. It comes out in the second half of 2021. It is, the next game in a long line of simulation racing titles, which I'm a big fan of. Specific, obviously, to this Gran Turismo will be the use of this new technology. So we're going to see a 4K, very high frame rate, just absolutely kind of gorgeous models and tracks and weather effects and blah, blah, blah. But some new things that they're doing is because of the power of the system, they are utilizing this 3D spatial audio so that if you're playing this game and racing with headphones on, you're going to be able to hear the location of cars 360 degrees around you. So there will be less of a reason to sort of look in your mirrors to see where someone's passing you from because you'll hear where they're coming from. And really, for me, the Gran Turismo series is all about the online competition. It's sort of like an esports mecha type game where a lot of people play it. It's highly competitive, and I'm looking forward to seeing, what the community is like in the next game.
Sick. Okay, 3 quick questions.
Oh, here we go.
1, have you played every game in the Gran Turismo series?
Yes.
2, is this in VR?
They haven't announced that yet. Gran Turismo 6 had a VR mode, but it was really limited. So you could only do time trials without other cars on the track, which sort of ruins the point. And I would imagine because of the power of the PS5 that they could surely put in a VR mode.
Okay, last quick question. How did you get into racers in the very first place? I actually don't know this.
Oh, my dad used to race for BMW. So
I didn't know that.
My whole family grew up really involved in motorsports. My brother still races to this day. I grew up racing go-karts, and I actually went to racing school in real life.
I did not know that. Amazing.
And yeah, so racing is sort of a pretty large part of my life. And so naturally, racing simulators are sort of a way to keep your skills in check when you're not able to actually go to the track. And you'd be surprised how helpful a lot of these racing simulations are when it comes to that.
Cool. So my number one is maybe number one for both of us, but Koray threw me a bone. And this one is technically cheating because we don't know for sure that this game is coming out in 2021.
We have so much hope, though.
But yeah, we're somewhat sure it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So Breath of the Wild, one of the greatest games of all time, in my opinion, has a sequel in development. And it makes sense for it to coincide with Zelda's 35th anniversary this year and with the launch of the rumored Switch Pro. What can I say about this game? I've played through Breath of the Wild 2 times. I love it so much, and based on the trailers and interviews, it looks like it's going to be a super dark, story-driven game akin to like a Majora's Mask.
Yeah.
And after the innovations Breath of the Wild took to move the series forward, I have a million ideas of what they might do with this game, and I'm sure none of them are right. So I just can't wait to see like what happens in this game, what the plot is, if Ganondorf's coming back, what new movement options, is it a new world, is there more dungeons? Like it's gonna be awesome. I'm really excited.
So Breath of the Wild was so iconic, not just because of its beautiful gameplay style or the environment it created or the storytelling, but because it branched away from some of the more traditional Zelda games, right? It wasn't quite as linear. It introduced like the weapon durability stuff and blah, 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 blah. What is, though, one thing that you'd like to see come back from previous Zelda games in this one?
I think I loved two things. I think the freedom to explore however you wanted was beautiful, and I don't want that to go away, but at the same time I want a slightly more linear plot.
Yep.
That has a stronger villain that progresses throughout the game and grows stronger.
Sure.
I felt like, Calamity Ganon was this big hulking evil monster, but it didn't seem to be like intelligent or anything. It just seemed to be like this wild force of nature. Whereas in other Zelda games, we watch Wind Waker, this Ganondorf that is not only powerful but intelligent and crafty, and like we see him develop through the game, and I love to see that. And I'd love to see some slightly more traditional dungeons come back, because the Divine Beasts were fine, but they all kind of looked and felt the same, so I want something a little more varied there.
My other question is, there are some rumors. People rumor things about this game. I don't know if you've heard. The rumor mill says that there's a chance that the player will be able to use Zelda as a character at some point. Those rumors. What are your feelings on this, and is that something you want to see?
I'm sure. I'd be happy to play with Zelda. I think in Age of Calamity, Zelda took a huge step forward. She started the game as a kind of child who didn't know how to harness her power, and by the end she was a strong, powerful, respected leader, and that's a lot more than Zelda has been in the series.
Sure.
So I'd be happy to have Zelda be a fully playable character alongside Link. I think that would be awesome.
Alex Bracken, my last game on the list. You know it, I know it. We all see it coming. Number one for me is Halo Infinite, which is slated for a fall 2021 release date. But God, who knows, right?
How many times has it been pushed back?
Like twice. And you know what? After the Cyberpunk debacle, I am so in favor of developers doing whatever they need to make sure that when a game is released, it is ready to go. So that said, it doesn't change my level of anticipation for this game. I'm very excited. Obviously, they released a gameplay trailer earlier in 2020, and people were like, what the shit is this? And they went back to the drawing board, fired a bunch of people, and it seems like they're getting it together now. But they, in short, this is the 6th Halo, and it's going to feature a more open world dynamic. This is also a game that the 343 Studios is really sure they're going to be focused on for 10 years. So they really want to make this sort of like a game that is going to change and progress for a very long time, which also is very interesting, sort of like the new way games are being made, where they just kind of continually update them. But I'm a big fan of the series. Master Chief is one of my favorite characters of all time. And it goes without saying that I'm just extremely excited for this one.
So Koray, you play a decent amount of first-person shooters. What is it about Halo that makes it more distinct and you more passionate about it than others?
Halo really took first-person multiplayer gaming on a console and made it huge. And I think it's because it's so accessible. You know, the game doesn't move as fast as some other first-person shooters from back in the day, like your Quakes and your Counter-Strikes, and your Call of Duties, which all sort of, they're intense, they move really fast. Halo's a little bit slower. It lets you sort of take a bite out of everything that's happening and chew onto it. You don't feel rushed as much. And along with that, the story is just so damn good that that's really what drew me into the series.
Very cool.
So Al, we have an honorable mention here for this list. One that was on both of our lists, and one that I think you should share.
What can we possibly say about Pokemon Snap?
Yes!
You know, Pokemon Snap is a classic game for N64, and we've been waiting for a sequel for 20 years, Koray.
It's been so long.
Oh my gosh, I have the best memories of playing that game with my mom, and the trailers look beautiful. Like
Adorable.
they look like what Sword and Shield should have looked like.
Yeah.
And it's going to be the most beautiful Pokemon game we've ever seen. It looks like it's going to be the same. It looks like they're not going to change the formula. It looks like they're going to stick to like the rail shooter concept and capture and you know, take pictures of the Pokemon. And I'm just so excited to.
Here's my not so hot take.
Oh boy.
It will be the best Pokemon game in the last decade.
Wow.
It
might be.
Pokemon.
How big do you think the game is going to be? Do you think
That's
it's like a little
my
quick
only
spin-off,
fear.
or do you think it's a full thing?
That's my only fear, is that it's going to be too short and too sweet.
Yeah. I don't know.
I'm excited.
I'm excited too. And those are our most anticipated games of 2021. Let us know in the comments below what games you're excited for in 2021. I'm Alex.
I'm Koray.
We're the Super Thought Bros. See you next time.